Yeah, so on my watch it's 9 o'clock. I don't know about you guys. Hi, Ahmed. Oh, and Jennifer already has a question. I would love to thank Armin for his graphics about the talent management cycle. I used it in a job interview and it was really helpful. Oh, wonderful. That's already a person familiar. So great. Yeah, I just gonna start. Also, Armin is a very busy man and hasn't got all morning. So yeah, hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Armin, for being our guest speaker. I will introduce you a little bit later. My name is Anja from Kenjo. I am signed in as Ruben. So just to let you know, I'm the senior content manager at Kenjo, a German company with offices in Madrid and Berlin. And today we speak about a topic that is going to be more and more important in the future. And the amount of people signed up for the webinar and attending 9 o'clock early in the morning are proof for exactly the importance of it. Our topic, how to turn managers into coaches and mentors rather than bosses, is so the really important topic we're going to talk about. The old way of being a boss is over. No longer can the leader drop orders just from a place of position, unless of course they are in the military. Employees no longer want to work just to keep their jobs. They want to work to be part of something bigger than themselves. And Professor Dr. Armin Trost will tell us exactly how this is going to be done. And also he's going to share some slides with us. So before we start, let me just say a few words about the structure of the webinar, our speaker, and of course ourselves, and then we can kick off the webinar. So we at Kenjo provide the right tools to turn managers into leaders. We help companies building a feedback culture with performance management and employee engagement tools through reviews, employee surveys, finding and setting the right goals and OKRs. Really important, so everyone is on the same page. An ENPS score and many more features to help finding people what they want. We work performance matrices to assess where employees are and where they're going to be or wanting to be. And if you'd like to try it out, Kenjo offers a free 14 days trial to work with all the features. And in the end of the slides, there's a contact button. You can contact me or Kenjo directly. So we're really excited to have Armin with us. As you all know, he's been a renowned and prominent thought leader in HR management for many years. He's also a teacher and researcher at HFU Business School since 2005. And for many, many years, he successfully advised companies of all sizes in HR management strategies. He's also written books, his latest being Human Resources Strategies, Balancing Stability and Agility in Times of Digitization. And well, he's an internationally sought after speaker and has one of the most successful HR YouTube channels. So we are really thrilled to have you here. Thank you very much for taking your time. The structure is the webinar will be in English and it will last roughly an hour. And Armin will start with a brief introduction and general overview. If you have any questions, you can post them anytime in the chat function here. I will collect them and in the end answer a question and answer them. Just please be aware that not all of your questions can be answered in a 1 hour webinar. Also, we record the webinar and in the next few days, we will send you a follow-up email with a link and an updated form of this presentation. So now I hand over the microphone to Armin and let's start.
Okay, thank you, Anja. And thank you to Kenjo to invite me for this session and to make this possible. It's really wonderful, and I'm happy to talk about this particular topic because it's extremely hot. It's really current and important. So when we talk about leadership, most companies have something like a leadership model in place. You probably also, this is one from a company like Merck, but it really proposes how you should be. Yeah, be purposeful, be future-oriented, be innovative. This is how you should be. Yeah, and the idea is when you are like this, then you are a good leader. Some other companies have things that describe a little bit more something like behavior, whatever that means. This is Nestlé, yeah, lead to win, manage for results, collaborate internally. So when I look at all these leadership models of various companies, I have the feeling that they all share the same. And I hardly believe that any leader in any organization really stands up in the morning, look at the leadership model and says, okay, that's the way how I should behave today. I don't think so. These are very, very generic. Also, I mean, another model proposed by Google, for instance, based on some research, it's pretty cool. That is more about behavior, what you should do, yeah, help with career development, express interest, have a clear vision and all the like. This is based on a project named Oxygen, where they looked at what successful leaders actually are doing. And that might apply for Google, but might not apply for your company. And I even doubt that this model really helps Google in all places. So here's the thing. Most leadership models, they focus on leaders' attributes, how you should be, or how you should behave. And this has always been the case, that when we look at leadership model, that they focus on this. And I think that's okay to a certain extent, but it's far from being sufficient. What I would like to do is I would like to focus on the context, on the relations and the structures. When I talk about relations, I also talk about the roles. Isn't leadership something about, not about the leader, him or herself? I think leadership is about the relation between the leader and the ones who are led. So we're going to talk about this, and we're going to talk about how you might shape your relation in different leadership situations. And I found this very, very, very essential. And what I see now is that many companies are really struggling with their understanding of leadership, if they have any. Very often leaders don't have an understanding about their own leadership. They lead somehow. So I would like to give you some structure, some thought in this webinar that you also can take home. So let's start a little bit with history. I would like to talk about the man on the right-hand side. This is Robert McNamara. Most you will know. The man on the left side is Lyndon B. Johnson, the former president of the United States. And this is a typical posture at that time. But let's talk about the man on the right side, Robert McNamara. He was an alumni of Harvard Business School, was the youngest professor at Harvard ever. He was the first president of the Ford company, who was not part of the family, of the Ford family. He's a very smart, decent, charismatic, value-driven man, really. Ideal leader, some would say, really. And when he was the president of Ford, I think in his early 40s, I mean, he was incredibly young at that time, he really boosted the success of Ford, really, by doing something that we still teach in business school, something like management by objectives. Yeah? He said, okay, let's have clear objectives, and then break it down, cascade it down, have clear resources, have reports, have KPIs, control what you're doing. He was so incredibly successful by doing that. So this kind of very classic kind of leadership. And then because he became the Secretary of Defense later in the administration of John F. Kennedy and later Lyndon B. Johnson, he became responsible for the Vietnam War. And he was the mastermind, the architect of the Vietnam War. And we can say that the Vietnam War was a complete disaster by any means. There is nothing good about the Vietnam War. It was a complete disaster. And he tried to lead through the Vietnam War just like he led Ford, by having KPIs, by having clear structure and everything. And he completely failed. And that's a wonderful history. and not a wonderful history, but it's a wonderful example, let me put it right. It's a wonderful example for how leadership might work well in one setting at Ford, but would completely fail in a different setting like the Vietnam War. And now you can ask yourself, today's business, is that more like Ford, building cars every year, doing the same thing over and over again? Or is current business environment more like Vietnam War? Okay, we are not in a war, but things are very, very complex, unpredictable, very fast. I would say we tend more towards the Vietnam War, even though we are not in a war, of course. So how do we lead in uncertain times? That's the big question. And what we learned in the old days does not work anymore. It simply does not work. Yeah. So why? Let's look at some situations here, some tasks of people. Some people work on tasks with a high certainty outcome. It's absolutely clear how the outcome looks like. Yeah. Okay. And some tasks have a clear certainty of process. You know how to get there. But some people in your organization work on projects like this. You do not know the outcome. It's big, and you do not know the way to get there. And these are the type of tasks that we have to use to, we need to get used to it. Yes, of course, you have also some tasks in the middle. I mean, think about yourself. What kind of task do you do? Yeah, probably a task where you do not exactly know the outcome. Not even your boss knows the outcome. You might have priorities, you might have a vision, you might have some budget or so, but you do not know the outcome. And you do not know how to get there. You have to walk step by step. So I really like the quote of this great philosopher and management thinker, Mike Tyson, who once said, everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. And that's what we feel today. Okay, let's have your plan, have your project plan, work on it. And 2 weeks later, you realize that, okay, the project plan was nice, but we have to adapt it to the new reality that we now have understood. And that also reminds us, by the way, for Corona, we have to change constantly because you walk in uncertainty. We have to learn while we walk. So, and that requires a completely different leadership. And some would say, okay, in uncertainty, you need a leader who is very strong, who knows everything. Okay, guess one thing, there is none. There is simply none. There is no leader who knows everything. It's not there, full stop. So how can we lead when you do not know the reality? Yeah. Okay, have your plan. Good luck with that. Yeah. The old day was like this. You always had this manager who had much general knowledge, much expertise, and the ones he or she was leading were like this, small. They knew nothing. So these people asked the boss what to do. Is that the right thing what we do? What should we do? Ask the boss, right thing. But now we have a situation where the managers have more general knowledge, maybe some rudimentary expertise, but the people are the experts. They have a deep understanding. Leadership on the right-hand side, completely different story than leadership on the left-hand side. And as you will see in a minute, when you try to be the left T, when you find yourself in the right situation, good luck with that. You're gonna have some crazy time and you're really gonna frustrate your people, absolutely. Yeah, some don't even have a leader. Yeah, this is the orchestra, the Orpheus Orchestra, incredibly successful. They don't even have a conductor. And they are successful not because, not even though they don't have a conductor, they are successful because they have no conductor. They lead themselves. They listen to each other. They think laterally. Every musician has the whole in his or her mind. It's completely understanding about leadership, and they lead. Yeah, they lead, really. It's not that there is no leadership in this orchestra. Of course there is leadership, but a shared leadership. And different people lead at different times because they have to make incredibly much decisions. What do we play, when to start, whom to involve in the orchestra and the like. Yeah. In some organizations, let's talk a little bit about the context. The people, they think in vertical ways. Yeah, they always look towards the supervisor, always. Yeah. What should I do? Which order do I get? Is that the right thing, what I do, boss? Okay. I've done a good job when my boss is happy. Okay, there might be a customer somewhere, but that does not matter. I work for my boss. Okay. But maybe your company is a little bit different. Maybe here it's that employees, and you look towards the customer. Sorry, the arrows are upside down. I don't know why. Yeah. So you always look to the customer. You say, I have done a good job when my customers are happy. Yeah. Or my colleagues are happy. You think in horizontal ways. Yeah. How is it in your organization? In classic organization, left side now, the more difficult the decision, the higher the risk related to the decision, the higher it goes in the hierarchy. This is because the decision is made by the one who is facing an acceptable level of risk. That's an important saying now. You escalate the decision to that point where the one who makes the decision is safe when doing the decision. Yeah. This is how it goes in very many organizations. For an employee, a decision might be big, but for the departmental head, the decision might be small. So let's have the departmental head doing the decision. It goes up to the level of acceptable risk. Yeah. Okay. In other organizations, the right side, it's the bigger the decision, the higher the risk, the more people are involved. That's a completely different thinking. Yeah. So how is it in your organization? Okay. It's like you know, the bees. The bees, they don't have a hierarchy at all. The bees, they explore the world, they go out, find flowers, and then they come back, and then they share the knowledge with others. They Twitter it, so to speak. And those bees who have good ideas, have good insights, they get power, right? They have more followers in that group. So, and this is a self-organized system. It's wonderful. So, is your company more like bees or the classic style? Here's another thing. Are you people divided? Do you have divided labor? Everybody's working on his or her own task, or is it that you work in teams and networks? Leadership on the left side is a completely different story than leadership on the right side, as you can realize. So be aware of the leadership context. That's rule number one. Yeah. That's the first thing I want to share with you. Yeah. Do you have uncertain tasks or certain tasks? Do you work in teams or do the people work separately? Are the people the experts or are you the expert? I will come to this again later. So be aware about the leadership context. And that's incredibly important. And we know this already from science that we had always these contingency theories. Right? Contingency theories say there is no right leadership. There is none. There is no right leadership behavior. And there is no good leadership attribute. There is none. It's completely dumb to think that way. There might be the right behavior in the right situation. And what is good in one situation is not good in another situation. I mean, we know this and research tells us, but I'm really surprised why so many companies ignore this little fact. Yeah. So that's rule number one. Now let's move further to rule number two. I'll come to this in a minute. And we first have to understand that the ones you lead, they consist of at least two different systems. So let's talk about the ones you are leading. And in psychology and also in philosophy to a certain extent, we always differentiate between two different layers of the human mind. We have the rational level and we have the intuitive level. I mean, think about Kahneman, Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel laureate who wrote this great book, Fast Thinking, Slow Thinking. Think about Sigmund Freud. He also differentiated the three areas. Jonathan Haidt, and many psychologists that differentiate these two layers. The rational level is about thinking. It's conscious. It's effortful. This is what makes the human being different from animals. That this is where intelligence, the conceptual intelligence located. But we also have the intuitive level where we feel, where we spontaneously act, where we have emotions, which is pretty much unconscious, which is very, very fast. So we have these two systems. So when leadership comes into play, we have to understand that the ones we're leading, they have these two layers. Okay, now rational level, intuitive level. And now let's make it very, very simple. Leadership is about the future and it's about the now, okay? So leadership means that you think about the future. And because you want to guide people, and you should really think on a rational level. And when you do this, when you really carefully think about how the future should look like, this is much effort. This is very, very complicated. This is something that you do over months. This is something that we name strategy, right? This is strategy. And now, okay, that's something you do. You have to do. You have to create a strategy to guide people. But is it that the people have to understand the strategy? I mean, some companies say yes. They say, our people have to understand the strategy of the organization. I would say no, it's not possible. I mean, how should they? I mean, the executive board might have worked on a strategy over months, having taken the advice of big consulting firms, and they have packs of slides and a lot of analysis and everything. And now you say, you want that the people understand the strategy? No, they won't. They simply won't. They can't. But what they have to understand is, or what they have to feel at least, is a translation of the strategy into something that we name the vision. The vision must be clear, but not the strategy. The vision is the emotional, intuitive, accessible translation of the strategy so that the people understand it in a second. That's the vision. And that vision always addresses our emotion and our relation, and not so much our conscious mind. But now let's look into the now. When it comes to the now, on the intuitive level, we talk about relation, we talk about trust, right? We talk about, yeah, trust. That's the main thing. We talk about fear maybe also. And on the rational level, we think about clear behavior that address problems. So what I want to do in this webinar is, when we think about leadership, I would like to talk about the now. I would like to talk about behavior and relation. So now comes the important part. Here is a little situation, a mail that every leader gets every time. So while you are in this webinar, you're gonna get this email, I promise you. Some people in your team send you a mail. Hi Mary, she's the manager. Please find attached the specification you've been working on over the last few days. We're supposed to send it to our client by Friday. Please let us know whether you're fine with it. Many thanks and regards, John. And attached is the specification. What will you do? How will you react on this, huh? How will you react? And this is a little leadership situation. This is in the now. How will you react? This is a very little, and that shows everything. Will you print that out and then, okay, I like it, yeah, but change this? Or you say, hey, just do it. Can we sit together? How will you react to this situation now? It's about the now, it's not about the future. How is your behavior? Now, here comes the thing that is really crucial. We have to differentiate between different leadership roles. The boss will always say, yeah, show me, I will check it. And then I say, change it that way so that I am happy. And I'm the boss, I must be happy in the end. The coach will say, hey, why are you uncertain? Why shouldn't it be okay? What is your uncertainty? How can you reduce your uncertainty? With whom are you supposed to talk? So you respond to his questions, always. You will never give an answer. If you are a partner, you say, come on, let's sit together. Let's jointly walk through the specification and think about whether we like it, whether we should send it out. It's the we. And you facilitate and you share the responsibility with everybody, while the coach leaves the responsibility with the team. Yeah. Or some leaders take the enabler role or the mentor role, saying, what do I need to do so that the people can decide by themselves whether something is okay or not? Why should I always make the judgment? What do the people need so that they by themselves can do a good job and make the right decision? So this is crucial. Yeah, these four roles. And every leader, consciously or unconsciously, has a mix of these roles. So rule number 2 is be clear about your role mix. Be clear about your role. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. This is how you might see yourself. You might see, okay, well, I'm a coach. I'm a coach. I always respond with questions. By the way, I also like a coach. When I deal with my students, I tell my students, whenever you ask me questions beyond the lecture, when you ask me a question about your thesis or whatever, I always will respond with a question. You are responsible. Yeah, I always look like a coach. And here, a little bit boss, a little bit enabler, and a little bit partner. This is how you might see yourself. Okay, this is how your team might expect you to be. This is a classic case. And I see so many leaders who report the situation. I want to be a coach, but the people expect me to be a boss. It's very nice to have a boss, by the way. And I would not agree that the people don't want bosses. Many people want bosses. Many people want bosses. They want somebody who makes a decision. They want to have somebody who takes the responsibility. They want to have somebody who guides you and you don't have to think by your own. But when you are a coach as a leader, but your people want to have a boss, good luck with that. You find yourself in a terrible situation. The people will say, the manager does not make any decision. What a lousy manager. He always responds with a question. Maybe he or she is not interested. Yeah. If you have this constellation, you are in a bad situation, really. The same with that. I mean, you want to be a boss, but your people want to be a partner. Bad. Very, very bad, really, because you act like a dictator. They will experience you like a dictator because the people say, we want that together with the manager. We sit together and we jointly think about the decision and what to do. And then comes the supervisor and makes the decision. And that's not good. He or she treats us not like adults. So bad situation. So make sure you and your team share the same understanding of your role mix. That's rule number 3. Who are you? What is your appropriate role mix in a given situation? Your default setting. Mind that could change maybe in different situations. You sometimes are a boss for some minutes, okay, but then you go back to your default setting, which might be the coach. So what is your role mix, and do you share the same understanding with your people? It's absolutely essential. Could even be, that's interesting, that this is how you see yourself. You see yourself like a coach, but your supervisor, yeah, I mean, you are led as well, want you to be the boss. But your people, they want you to be like a partner and an enabler. If this is the constellation in which you are in, you again have a very, 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 very hard time, really. So it's good to understand who you see yourself in a given context. It's good to know what your people expect from you. It's really good to know. It's also good to know what your supervisor expects from you. So this is a reflection process. And when I coach leaders, I always use this model to understand, okay, how is your role mix and how do others see yourself and what is expected from you and so on. This is absolutely crucial. And then act consequently according to your role mix. It's absolutely crucial. If you say you're the coach, stay the coach. Sometimes you have to act like a boss, but then announce and say, hey guys, it's 7 p.m. I want to go home. We have discussed a lot. If you may, then I make a decision now. Is that okay? I make a decision. I be the boss for a minute, and then it's done. Okay. And in the next day, you continue in your normal default setting. Okay. How can you turn bosses into coaches and mentors? I always would recommend to do this in a social setting. Always, for various reasons. And I would always ask leaders in a group, what are the business challenges they face? This is the starting point. And then I would reflect with them on the context. And here the thing comes into place, what we already have discussed. These are things, left side, do you optimize things, high task certainty, the manager is the master, divided labor, the people think vertically, or are you right side? How is your situation on the right side? Disruptive, much uncertainty, the people are the experts, you work in teams, and the people are dedicated to the clients. How is your situation? And in practice, this very often looks like this. You have a board and you let the leaders adjust, okay, how is my context and how will my context be in the future? Very, very nice exercise. So once you have understood the context, let the attendees, the leaders think about the right role mix. And I use a template like this very often. It's just one page. Yeah. I ask the people, take 10 points 10 points and share them across these different roles. How much boss, how much coach, how much enabler, how much partner. You do it for yourself, how you want to be, how you need to be, and then you also look what your people expect from you. Yeah, and then when you do these two perspectives, you already get a wonderful insight on where might be some conflicts, where are the things compatible or not. And then you think about real situations. That's so crucial. You cannot change leadership by just teaching leadership style or sharing a leadership model. You really have to reflect on real situation and ask the leaders in the room, what are difficult or critical leadership situations? And here are some examples. I mean, some real ones, yeah. 2 team members are in constant conflict. The entire team is suffering from it. You as a supervisor, you have to act. At least you feel it. How do you act? A simple case, a simple, difficult case. A boss would say, okay, I have to make a judgment. The coach would say, think about how you solve the conflict. A partner would say, okay, let's sit together and solve the thing. An enabler would say, what do I have to do so that the people are better able to solve conflicts, or maybe they need support now. So how will you act in that real situation? And really, by the way, most leadership models that are in place in your organization, they don't help you on that. Really not. So here's another one. A key client is seriously complaining about some decent trouble. The client is threatening with quitting the business relationship, and you have to act instantly. You get this call from the client. How do you react? As a boss, you take control and say, this is what we do now. Bop, 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 bop. A coach would say, hey guys, here's the client calling me in. Now, please come up with some proposal in the next 2 hours. Think about it. As a partner, you would say, okay, let's sit together and solve that thing together. As an enabler, you would say, what do I have to do that those things don't happen again in the future? How do you act? Well, here's a classic one. I mean, these are all real cases I took from seminars in the past. An employee is constantly asking for a salary increase. He considers himself as a top performer. Actually, he's not. How do you deal with that situation as a leader? That's a difficult one. How do you react on this? So you really think about real situation, because, you know, my experience is that when you share a modern leadership view with your leaders, they all nod. Yeah. Being a coach would be cool. Being a mentor, that would be cool. Yeah. Let's be modern, agile. Yeah. But when they find themselves in the real situation, facing with real challenges, they fall back into their old role mix. It's always the case. And then they are buzzy all over. So really reflect on real situation. That's absolutely crucial. Okay. And that is not done with a workshop, but then with a continuous follow-up where you constantly think about, okay, how do I need to adapt my leadership behavior? How can I do this? Yeah. Okay. So this is really a process that I would recommend. Really, I have found many organizations that made a different approach. They say, okay, let's have some leadership principles. They create leadership principles in a workshop, and then they roll it out. They implement the leadership principles. They share it and post it on the walls, and so and the idea is that once the leaders really understand the leadership principles, then they will act upon these. And this is wrong. This is simply wrong. They won't. Yeah. As I sometimes say, you cannot change leadership culture by changing the leadership culture. You can't. I mean, you can communicate every day. You have nice posters and nice keynotes and all the like, always preaching to the leaders that they should be coaches. They won't. They simply won't, because they do not know what that means. And it's too generic. It's too far away from the reality. These leadership principles are so generic that they very often do not help in a real daily situation. But how can a leader act consistently when the leadership principles are not tangible, are not concrete enough in a very specific situation. So that's why I absolutely believe that leaders have to reflect, actively reflect on who they are supposed to be in a given context, and then actively reflect on real situation. And it has really much power if you do this not alone, but when you do this in a group. It's that I found absolutely essential, and that's a good way of doing it. Okay. Here's rule number 5, and let's look a little bit towards HR in the last minutes of this webinar today, so we still have room for some questions. Rule number 5 means provide tools and processes that are supportive and compatible. This is something that I would recommend to HR now. First of all, HR can run things like I have just proposed. Just do that. Run workshops, run sessions, offer leadership coaching so that the people have the chance and the room and the time to actively reflect on their context, their roles, and their relations. Yeah, without reflection, you have no chance. So you as HR, you can provide this frame. This is something that you can do. What you also can do is that you can offer supportive tools, like employee surveys, for instance, or feedback tools, so that the managers can see, okay, how do the people perceive myself, or what are the behavioral expectations from the ones I lead. So as HR, you should have things that are supportive and not directive. Yeah, you will never really, I tell you, you as the HR function, you will never be the one telling the leaders how they're supposed to lead. They will not accept it. They will not accept it. You are not in the position to tell leaders how they're supposed to lead. The CEO is in the position, but you're not. You're really not. In some HR functions, they think they could preach the people how they're supposed to lead. I have not seen any company where this really worked. Really not. But the more important part of the rule is the second one, the compatible one. And here's the thing, and I would like to share with you some ideas here. I think that a lot of things that we do in HR are built around bosses. The classic performance appraisal idea, the classic one, is very compatible with the boss role. Agreeing on objectives, top down, yeah. The bosses make a judgment one time in a year. The boss gives the feedback one time in a year. It's very individual, so division of labor, not teams. Yeah, it's very vertical thinking. Here's the boss that comes into play. So the performance appraisal is something that works very well with bosses, but does not work for some other roles. For instance, coaches and partners never judge formally. This is something that I've not invented. This is, I would say it's a kind of a truth that was brought up by Douglas McGregor, my real management hero, Douglas McGregor, who wrote the book in 1959, The Human Side of Enterprise. He brought up the idea that coaches don't judge, to put it simple. So, I mean, you can experience it in your organization. If you have managers who want to coach, really want to coach instead of being boss, sorry, when you come up with your performance appraisal and you force these managers to make judgment about others, they will hesitate, or they will give them perfect grades. They will say, HR wants me to judge you. Okay, I judge you. You get the perfect grade. So are you happy now? Okay, you are happy, HR is happy, and I'm happy as well. But I mean, this is completely rubbish. And then in HR, we say, the managers are not mature enough to use the tool appropriately. No, it's the opposite. HR has not understood that the people don't want to be bosses anymore. Huh? They want to coach. And when they want to coach, they don't judge. So take away all the judgment. Now, that's a difficult thing because sometimes you have to make judgments. Yeah, but that's a different story. Bosses can't give feedback. They can't. Yeah. Why not? Because bosses are authorities, and whenever they give a feedback, I mean, a feedback is something where the one who receives the feedback is supposed to own the feedback and then think about, okay, what does that mean to me, reflect on it. But when the feedback comes from the boss, who is an authority and who will decide upon your future salary, this turns into a judgment. You see, and there's a difference between a judgment and a feedback. Don't want to go too deep into this one, but we have to be careful here. Bosses can't give feedback. It's simply not possible. Yeah, it's something that we still have to learn. While enabler always does. A manager who acts like enabler always gives feedback, even unsolicited feedback. It's his or her job, right? Bosses, of course, they set objectives. They say, look, John, this is the objective. This is my expectation. Got it clear? Okay, right, go ahead. Coaches would never do so. Never, never. They would ask the people, okay, what will we achieve given this priority? Yeah. Coaches encouraged to ask for feedback. Coaches, by the way, it's also interesting. In literature, very often say coaches give feedback. No, they don't. Coaches don't give feedback. They are not in a position to give feedback. They would rather ask the people, have you asked for feedback? What do the customers say to what you did? How do the colleagues think about what you have done? Yeah. But a coach will never give feedback. You know, sounds crazy for some of you, I know. Yeah. Partners don't negotiate employee salaries. They don't. I mean, they are on the same eye level. They don't do so. Yeah. Partners never make isolated hiring decisions. They would always share the decision with their teams. Always, always. Enablers constantly ask, what do you need? This is what they do. Bosses constantly assign learning measures to people. Say, hey, John, you should be better in English. So here's the course. You go there. A coach would never do so. He would say, what do you think? What do you say? How good is your English? Have you ever thought about this? Okay, you think that your English is not so good? What would you propose what to do? So you see, I've taken some, it's just a little snapshot on different things that we do in HR. But the main trouble with leadership in HR is that very often the things that we do in HR are not compatible with the leadership style that we want to see in an organization. Very often not. And I see organization where HR function says, we drive the agile or digital transformation. And in reality, very often they don't. They stand in the way for agile transformation with their old tools. So we better think of different things here. Okay, so that's for the moment. For those who want to read more, here's my book, Human Resource Strategies. Anja already has mentioned. And also, I know that some of you know my news challenge series on YouTube, the Human Resource Strategies. You find this on YouTube, but also on podcast. And this is just to mention that here. Okay, so Anja, I'm through. Hope it was not too much. Here's, I think, another slide, and good. Maybe you take over, Anja.
Yes, thanks, Armin. That was really, really interesting, and I could tell by the amount of questions people asked during your webinar that there's space for like at least 2 more webinars, because people have like bombarded us with so many questions. And I will use this time to ask a few, if you don't mind, Armin. So first of all, there was actually a few questions really interesting coming even before the webinar when the guys signed up. For example, the first one, how can HR set leadership standards and assure that they are allowed, that they are followed, sorry. Maybe you can elaborate.
This is the old idea that HR is setting leadership standard and then make sure that the leaders follow up. I would not do so. In some settings you could do so, but it's much better that HR gets together as partners, you know. I mean, we have HR business partners, so also act like a partner and sit together with the leaders and have a 2-day workshop, for instance, and jointly think about what are our standards. I have never seen any organization where HR people thought about leadership standards and then went to the leader saying, look, these are the standards that we have defined and you have to follow these standards. Will not work. Will not work. Will not work. Over.
That's pretty clear.
Will not work. Okay. Will not work.
Yeah. No, you're right. And also, well-being and engagement at work is a hot potato right now. How would you measure well-being and engagement at work is a hot potato right now. How would you measure well-being and engagement beyond absences and company turnover?
In very, very simple terms, if you want to measure it, the first question, who is you? Who wants to measure? Who is you? The executive board, HR, or who needs this information for what? Yeah, that's the first question. Okay, but there might be some function who really need this information. Okay, maybe the teams themselves, they want to know how good they feel. Yeah, as a kind of feedback tool, or parts of organization, they want to join, want to know how they feel. And I mean, you can do all sorts of things. You can have questionnaires, maybe you can have personal conversation. Talk to people. That's very powerful, right? And even when you use questionnaires, can be very, very, very simple. You don't need 200 questions to understand the well-beings of people. Very often it's just a few questions.
I also think it's sometimes just coming down to common sense, like being in constant communication, obviously, which in especially bigger companies might not be the case as often.
Yeah, but even in bigger companies, I mean, the good CEOs know how powerful it is to talk to some people, walk around, talk to some people. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, a question I found quite interesting in that terms is, what about an alt-hierarchically built organization in which the people strive for typical boss roles, and suddenly a new CEO says, you all get servant leaders because this is the future. How can you make sure these important performers adapt the new definition of leadership and are not lost?
Yeah. The thing is that there must be a rationale behind why a CEO wants this. Sometimes you have a CEO who just comes home from holiday having read a book about agile leadership, fell in love with the new management philosophy and thinks, oh, this is great, I want to do the same with my organization. It's ridiculous, because it's not the question about what you like or so. It's a question about what makes sense, really. And also, when I talk about leadership, it's not about well-being in my eyes, or love, or I think, hey, the things must be good. And you want to serve your customer in the end with great products, and you want to be compatible and competitive, and you want profitable. This is what you want. So the question is, what works best? And bosses, in some cases, work best. In some cases, it's absolutely the best way to have bosses. Really, it's fast. Really, having bosses, it's very, very fast. It's clear. It's the Ford example I was sharing with you, with Robert McNamara in the beginning. Sometimes bosses are the best role, no doubt about it. But in some situations, bosses are completely wrong role. So the first thing which must become clear, not only to CEO, but also to the leader, is that the situation has changed, the context. And once they have understood that the context has changed, that we have to collaborate more, that we work in an uncertain setting, that the people are the experts, not the manager. Once we have understood the context, you will instantly understand that you need to take a different role. And really, it's about this rationale that has to become apparent. I think I mean, this is just one building block. There are some more factors that you have to take into consideration, but this is one thing. You will not become agile just because you want to become agile, because it's so nice to become agile and everybody's talking about being agile. This will not make it. This power will just last a day, but any transformation is so painful that you should be sure why you are doing that.
Mm. I think also, like somebody asked, for example, in a manufacturing company, it must be rather hard to like introduce a new leadership training, and is there even a need to do that? I guess
let's be careful. Manufacturing, we always think about manufacturing all blue collar structured. No. Sometimes manufacturing is very, very dynamic. But again, hey, I've seen organizations that are absolutely hierarchical, where you have bosses, and that's the best thing you can do. Really. Please, and that's important, and I can tell it from the question that we all feel this tendency, we now have to become coaches. No, you don't have to. Really not. Why should you? Why should you? Why not staying a boss? Boss is cool. I mean, it really depends on the situation. And I'm absolutely with the one who was asking here. In some areas, in some companies, you need to have hierarchical structure. You have to have labor division. You have to have bosses who know everything, and the people just follow. And it's absolutely cool. Really. I mean, really, it's we should not say boss is bad and coach is good. Would be a very, very big mistake, really.
It's you're saying it's a mix of both worlds putting together, and then it makes it work. Mm.
It's also very hard for us in HR, by the way. The thing is that when we were talking about the context, any organization would say, yes, we have this traditional context, yeah, and we have agile context. For instance, here we have production, but here we have R&D, research and development. And these are completely different domains within the same company. And now comes HR and say, is it possible to use the same techniques, the same tools, the same things in both areas? The answer is a clear no. No.
And do you think it's also a mix of both things in terms of working at home because of the Corona pandemic? Virtual working, is the HR role in supporting the managers a mix there as well, rather than being a team member all the time, also sometimes just put in the orders, so to speak?
I'm not sure whether I got the question right.
So the question was, am I reading it? What are the views in managers' role in tracking productivity in these days of uncertainty and virtual working, and HR's role in supporting the managers while working remotely? Yeah. The thing is, as I already have outlined, it's absolutely uncertain. You don't know the outcome. You do not know what is the right thing, how you act in the near future. But at the same time, we know psychologically that whenever there is uncertainty, the people try to reduce their uncertainty by looking left and right and looking upwards. When the people feel uncertainty, they are asking for a boss. They ask for strong guidance. They ask for authority. But at the same time, in an uncertain time, the authority does not have the capability to tell the people how the reality is. So the first thing that you might do is that you articulate your uncertainty and say, it's uncertain. Yes, it's uncertain. And not to do as if there would be any certainty where you don't have one. Yeah. This is how I would see it. Be transparent, I guess. Yeah. And also, Somebody hears I hear a lot from CEOs and management that this kind of collaboration, making decision, is ineffective. What do you think about that? Like a bold statement.
When you are in a hierarchical setting, decisions are very fast, and you can implement decisions very, very fastly. This is sometimes why in uncertain times you want to have authorities, because they can make a decision and then implement it fastly. Hierarchical organizations with bosses are fast. Yeah, there is no long debate. So saying agile leadership is faster than hierarchical, it's exactly the opposite. Agile, being coach, being partner takes much more time than being boss, because you have sometimes endless debates, endless discussion. You take the consideration of many people on board, and that's painful, and that takes a lot of time. So the thing is that when you have bosses and coaches, when you work in an agile way, you make the better decisions. That's the point. And you are more adaptable, and this is what counts. You make the better decisions. It takes much more time, but you make the better decisions. We have seen this with dictatorships. Let's think about Stalin. Think about Mao Zedong. Think about Hitler. Think about these extreme dictators. It's incredible how crazy decisions they make. So the probability that if one single person with one single mind makes an isolated decision in a complex situation, the problem that the decision is wrong is extremely high. And it's absolutely risky to let one person decide alone in a complex situation. But it's fast, yes?
Well, as you said earlier, it's a mix of both decisions. Sometimes you need to be fast and just
sometimes
have no time to it's
knowing that the decision might be the wrong one.
True, but sometimes no decision is also the wrong decision. So
exactly.
I guess you're right. It's a mixture of both. Not focusing just on being a coach or a boss, but a combination of both roles, probably leading towards the future.
I asked in the last 3 years, I was asking hundreds of managers. I was working with hundreds of managers, always asking, what is your role mix? Using this 10-point technique. And really, from all the hundreds, I'm just guessing, there were 99 leaders who always said, I always have at least 1 point or 2 points dedicated to the boss role. And that's reasonable. You should never give up this option. As a leader, you always have to be a little bit a boss, at least, because sometimes you trigger that one. Say, guys, discussion over, I make a decision. I've not yet seen any manager saying, I'm not a boss at all. It's interesting.
Yeah, but I think it makes sense. If you think also from the point of view from the employee, sometimes you just want to have the burden lifted off your shoulder of being responsible for everything. When there's so many people, it might end up just in a lot of talking and no decision. So I think humans need sometimes that person who steps forward and takes decisions, even uncomfortable ones, so the company can move forward. It's almost 9 o'clock, but you let me know. I mean, I can ask many more questions. Just let me know if you have time for 1 or 2 more questions. Otherwise, we would wrap up the webinar. Up to you, really. If you have like time for 1 or 2 more questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Somebody asked, should you get rid of people who want to have a different leader role than you want to be yourself? So if they're not willing or able to change their perspective and they sound like a bad fit for the company or the team.
It's hard to say a yes and no, but I would tend to say yes. If people in let's say in an R&D environment, research and development, where you want to have people who really think, who really take over responsibility, who work in teams, who wake up in the morning, think, okay, how can I solve the problem better? If you have people in such an organization say, no, I want to have a boss who tells me what to think. The question is, do you really accept this? And if you want to stay competitive, you would never accept these kind of people. You would say, you are wrong here. Really, you are wrong. If you don't want to take over responsibility, if you don't want to think, you just simply do not your job and find another place where you're going to be happy. It's okay if somebody does not want to think. If it's okay when people don't want to take responsibility at the workplace, but managers must not accept this.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds harsh.
No. Yeah, but it's I guess it's the reality. One last question coming from Caroline. How can HR support managers with the most ideal tools when there are so many different roles for managers? How should HR rethink?
Having flexible roles, flexible tools. Yeah. What we in HR very often have is we tell the people, look, here's the hammer, and that's the right tool for you. And we assume that managers all act in the same way, are faced with the same problems, and we assume the hammer is the right thing for everything, and it is not. So I see in HR that we more and more move towards a diverse tool set. You say we have different tools in place, we have different things here, and it's not that everybody is supposed to use everything in the same way. It simply does not work. You have to bring in flexibility in what you do and give managers the responsibility to take what they need. I think this is the direction that we're going to find in the future. This one size fits all no, does not work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what that means. I worked in HR too long. Me, myself, I also implemented performance appraisal in an international company. And I know how hard it is. And I know how much we want to have standardization. And I know how much we in HR want to have one single tool for everything. I know how much we love simplicity and having one thing for everything. But reality tells us that very often it's much more simpler to have flexibility than having one overall killer tool for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. Yeah, to have more specific tools for the specific problems. For example, we at Kenjo we have the tools to implement performance reviews, employee surveys, or ENPS, to focus on that performance management process. So this is one big thing, and that's really important for HR managers to use rather than being scattered all over. Well, I just gonna wrap up the webinar as we can. I literally have 10-15 more questions here to ask you. Maybe we will do one of this kind of webinar again if Armin has time or so. Definitely, I will send out a collection of summary of the webinar, the recorded version, the slides of the presentation, and also a bunch of the questions answered. So you guys have everything you needed to know during this webinar to record again. And thank you so much for staying here. There's still like 50 people hanging on here, wanting to know more. And thank you, Armin, for your time and the webinar. It was really, really interesting. And like, again, so many cool facts and information on a trending topic, really. So in the next few days, I send out the email with all the info. You can also anytime email back if you have any questions. In the email there, you find access to a 14-day free trial for Kenjo's performance management feature, but also for a free HR course we are doing at the moment at no cost about implementing remote working into your system, where we talk as well about employee engagement, performance review, finding the right tools. So that's pretty cool, and it's totally free. It's 8 days. You receive all the information there. And we're also planning a new webinar in a few weeks' time, where we will send out an information email there as well in a few weeks' time. We will be looking forward to hearing your feedback if you have any. Thanks a lot for sending your questions in, and thanks a lot, Armin, again for answering them. So I wish you all a happy day, and speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anu.
All right. Thanks. Ciao, guys.